first time I tried it, it became my main audio interface, not only here in my home studio, but also anywhere I go and I need to record. There's so many to point out about the Babyface Pro, but I absolutely love its size, weight, and of course, it allows me to record my guitar with the best sound quality I can. Over the years, I've learned how to an efficient creative process and how important workflow can be. And RME is the foundation of my workflow. Without it, I wouldn't be able to creatively accomplish what I want quickly and efficiently. I have a bunch of their converters and devices for routing audio and workflow, analog or digital. And I brought that for recording, for stems, for my laybacks, and just in general everyday work. They're just an amazing company. I first heard about the company working for Hans Zimmer. That's when I became familiar with them, and ever since then, watching how he worked and how he incorporated digital technology with his compositional workflow and real instrument and sense, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Technical hurdles will stifle creativity and progress. So, with that in mind, I have a drum set that's ready to be played. It's already mic'd up and ready to go. I have a guitar amp that's mic'd up and ready to go. I have a bass amp that's plugged in, mic'd correct, ready to go. I have microphones ready for voiceover, ready to go. I've got a mic set up for specifically for meetings online that I use, and that requires a lot of physical intercourse and a lot of clever routing. And the way that I'm able to do that, fortunately, is I use RME, Fireface UFX Plus interface, and a RME 12 mic unit, and both of those together give me 24 physical inputs between both of those units, and ADAT input and output, AES, EBU, and MADI in and out, which is great. I mean, I've hooked the 12 mic via MADI into the UFX Plus so that I can utilize those channels and free up ADAT channels for other uses such as headphone distribution amps and things like that that I want to route in that way.
Well, welcome to the, I don't know, third or fourth installment of RME Tech Live, or whatever we're calling this. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. Happy to be here today.
Me too.
Awesome.
So for those of you who are new to this, this is for you. If you're an RME user or considering an RME product, or we also represent some other brands here in the United States, Pharaoh Fish, Apsis, MyMix. If you have questions about those products, we can also address them here as well. Before we get started, I don't think we have any questions yet, but you will ask these in the chat and we will try to address them and demonstrate and screen share whatever we need to do to answer your question. I think today Jeff is down in Fort Lauderdale. I'm here in Tampa, and kind of going to start off with kind of the setup that I'm using today, which is a little different than normal. I'm using an actual RME 12 mic. It's a 12-channel mic pre, and I have this microphone here plugged in, and I'm using an RME Babyface Pro, and the RME 12 mic has ADAT optical I/O on it, in addition to MADI and also, excuse me, and MADI and also AVB. So I'm using into my Babyface Pro, and can kind of share that with you right now and kind of give everyone a sense of what we're doing. My Babyface Pro, and here is my RME 12 mic. Jeff, you see those okay?
Yeah, that looks great.
All right. I'm not sure if my Zoom window is in the shot or not.
It is now.
Okay, let's get rid of that. That's kind of annoying. So this is a web GUI for the 12 mic. You can connect a USB cable directly from your computer to the 12 mic, and I have the 12 mic within arm's reach. And I have as I said before, you can control everything on the Babyface with Total Mix in terms of the audio, but I can use the web GUI for the mic pre. So I go into an IP address that I can get right off the front panel of the mic pre itself when I'm using the USB, and put it into a web browser and can see my analog inputs, all of my digital inputs that are available to me. I can set my clock master, which in this case I'm using internal clock on this, and 48K, and I have my microphone here, and there's a new feature now in here called auto set, so we'll talk about that as well. And the cool thing about this product, if you're not familiar with RME's 12 mic or AVB tool, they're like little patch bays because they have other I/O in addition to the mic pre's. So I'm literally routing the first 8 mic inputs of this device to the ADAT 1 through 8 out, which is connected into my Babyface over here. And I'll widen the Babyface GUI so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So these are the 8 digital inputs on my Babyface that I've renamed. Normally they have these names, and I've renamed them just for clarity's sake. So we got 12 mic, 1, 2, 3, etc. And I'm feeding that to all of you through here. So little different setup, and we thought, we would show this and kind of kick things off with the expandability functionality of RME in general. So what kind of questions do you get about this, Jeff?
Well, usually, I mean, this is quite a lot of the job, actually, of answering the phones here at Syntax, is helping people figure out exactly what is going to solve the problem that they're currently facing. So, it's about getting a handle on what are the customer's needs and expectations, what's the budget, and, what do we have that fits into that. Now, I noticed with the 12 mic, you have 12 mic inputs, but you only had 8 channels connected to the Babyface. And the reason for that is that the Babyface has one ADAT input port and one ADAT output port. Each port can do 8 channels if you're at single speed, meaning 40/1 sample rate or 48K sample rate. If you increase the sample rate, then you're really only getting 4 channels. So in order to take full advantage of the 12 mic, you would need an interface with ADAT, at least 2 channels of ADAT, or MADI, or an AVB system. So for instance, if you were to hook this 12 mic up with the Fireface 802 or UFX Plus or UFX2, you'll be able to get all 12 channels, not just the first 8. So, the 12 mic is a pretty interesting system. If you're working with higher sample rates going up to 96K, there's actually 3 ADAT output ports on the unit. So each one of those would be 4 channels. So first port is 1 through 4, second port is 5 through 8, and the third port is 9 through 12. So bear in mind, the sample rate does have an impact when you're dealing with ADAT or MADI. If we're working with AVB, it's not such an issue. AES-EBU doesn't really have these kind of channel limitations based on the sample rate either. So that's something to bear in mind.
I'm getting a question from, this is on the Facebook page. So can you explain how to connect the AVB tool to my main RME UFX2? Pretty simple. I'll let Jeff handle that one.
Well, actually, the AVB tool...
the AVB tool doesn't have the ADAT port.
Right. If you have a UFX Plus, you can connect the AVB tool to that via the MADI connection. The UFX Plus has that fiber optic MADI and coax MADI built in, but unfortunately with the UFX2, the AVB tool isn't really going to connect to that directly. You'd need to convert into MADI into ADAT, so that gets pretty convoluted. It's doable, but seems like there should be a better way. What's the use case here? You could answer on the chat.
While he's writing that, I was going to share, I have a diagram that sort of shows the variety of ways that an AVB tool can be connected to some of the RME gear. But as Jeff was just saying, this particular unit doesn't have the ADAT I/O that the 12 mic does. So with the Fireface UFX2, you don't have AVB and you don't have MADI, which are really the 2 primary ways to use an AVB tool. So I like to show, like with the 12 mic, for example, there's ADAT outs here. So you could connect those to a Fireface UFX2, but of course with the AVB tool, you don't have that. And you only have 2 analog outputs. So if you were going to use the converters on the Fireface, you still don't have a good way to get from this box to the UFX2 version. And then a lot of people ask me about the MADI way to go, and you have MADI out on those 2 devices, and this right now I'm showing a Digiface Dante. I don't have a Fireface UFX picture for this, but you could go
same thing.
Yeah, you could go coax in or using the SFP. You could go MADI optical into the Fireface UFX Plus. So.
So yeah, the AVB tool is kind of an interesting concept. It's a little bit unique in RME's world. It's kind of a format converter primarily, meaning you can change AVB to MADI bidirectionally, 64 channels each way, of MADI going to AVB and AVB going to MADI. But on top of that, you've also got some local IOs. So you have a couple of mic pre's, you have headphone outs and line outs, and this is really a big piece of the RME AVB system going forward, being that the AVB tool is perfect for, putting it into different rooms in your studio where you want to record. You just run a cable, you bring your AVB tool, you plug it in to your AVB network, and now you can do recording and monitoring of playback plus your own voice directly off of that AVB tool. So instead of having a fixed installation, if you say, oh, wow, the acoustics in the bathroom are great, we just run a Cat5 cable over there, plug it in, and you can do your recording. So the AV tool is pretty cool for sort of small channel count scenarios where you only need a couple of inputs, but you need to be mobile, or where you're going to set up varies. But it can also be used in, something like a courtroom setting where you're recording tons of mics and bringing them all together via the AVB network or the MADI system to merge all that together.
Well, that was a pretty complete answer. Yeah, and the other thing too, I don't know if this person that asked that question has the AVB tool or is considering it. Another way to go might be the quad mic and go analog, because that mic pre has analog output, so you could go right into the line inputs of the UFX too.
Sure, or the even the you could use the Octamic 2 or Octamic XTC with ADAT.
Yeah, so I mean, we get, and really the only thing you got to really think about is clocking. Just remember, it's usually a good idea to make the audio interface your master clock, and when you can, if you're sending audio back to it. Now in this setup, Jeff, I'm using, I put the 12 mic in internal clock. I was only going one cable. I went ADAT out of the 12 mic into the Babyface. And actually, let me just see if the Babyface, the clock master is set to internal. So I have the Babyface on internal, and I have the 12 mic on internal, and I'm passing ADAT. In theory, that might create some problems, right?
Well, yeah, that eventually will sort of devolve into clicks and pops. So probably should set your Babyface to sync to ADAT. But it can kind of work without problems for a little while, but they're basically free running, and you can't have that with the digital system.
Yeah, so even I make mistakes. So I'll show you, like, here's my Babyface settings. Everybody gets a little Fireface little icon in their task tray. And I have the clock source set to internal on my Babyface, and then over here I have, this is the 12 mic.
Can you pull that back up again, that panel? I just want everybody to see that. So you see in the bottom section, that last one, it's the input status, and it's flipping between sync and lock. So that's telling us that we don't have a good clock situation. That should always say sync if there's a input connected and everything's set up correctly.
So I should choose this, right?
Yep. And now it'll just, stick to sync now.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then over here on the 12 mic, now you can do it on the little front panel. It's a little trickier, but here I like using the GUI. So in fact, it's a little better if I widen it out. But you can see right here, my clock is set to internal, and then you can depending on which. I always have to relearn this GUI.
Yeah, this has been under heavy development, so there's changes in every firmware update now, but it's always getting better and
Oh, I
more
remember
refined
now.
and faster.
If you connect a MADI cable, it'll pop up here.
Yeah,
That's
you'll be able
I'm
to
looking
choose.
for it and I don't see it, and then you can click on it and make MADI the clock and that kind of stuff. That's why I was kind of confused. So.
Yep.
While we're in this panel, if you have a Babyface, another question we get a lot is this whole DSP. How do I record the EQ? This is where it is right here. If you check it, any of your EQ settings on your inputs will be captured in your DAW. And if you don't, then you're just monitoring it. So, And of course, if it's a Fireface, you also have a separate checkbox. Is a Fireface DSP everything, or is it two checkboxes?
It's EQ plus dynamics.
Got it.
So actually, this is a good chance to talk about RME's effect system. It's a little different than you might imagine. It doesn't work in the same way like a universal audio plug-in system works. The RME way is that the input signal is recorded dry. That's the primary usage, and you're using the effects for your headphone mix. So you're able to put EQ and reverb onto your headphone mix without having any bearing on what's being recorded. And it allows you to get a nicer mix with some confidence reverb in the headphones. On some of the bigger units, the Babyface does not have the dynamics, but Fireface UCX and the large Fireface 802s, UFX2 and UFX Plus, a couple of the MADI cards do have a full DSP, which includes dynamics on every channel. So that's a compressor on every input and every output. It's pretty power hungry, so you can't really put it on every single channel, but with some good planning, it works really, really well and allows you to capture everything just as it is in the room, but still get a real nice sound in your headphones, which is going to give you more confidence for your recording. Now, when you check those boxes, though, that EQ plus D for record or EQ for record, that will put those effects into the recording path.
Are you using a Fireface right now?
Yeah.
You want to show them? You can share your, because it looks a little different than the Babyface.
Boom. Okay. Share screen. Okay. So there's my total mix. And let me now show you the settings panel. Okay, so here's our settings panel for the UFX Plus. I'm running on Windows. Derek's running on Mac, so it looks a little different, but same kind of deal. We have our buffer size up at the top on Windows. You can select this overall. On a Mac, the buffer size is set per app. So every app you use will have its own buffer setting. On Windows, it's a global thing with the driver. We have our switches for input options. And right here is our checkbox EQ for record. So right now we're using a loopback system, which means I'm capturing the output back into Zoom using RME Total Mix to do that. So all my effects are already included, which I'm currently running a pretty hardcore noise gate because I'm in a noisy room. But no EQ and no reverb, and you're just hearing sort of that dynamics going. You might hear it drop off like that. So that's got those settings. Then I've all my different inputs statuses down at the bottom. This is really this is the Bible. This is where you find out what is going wrong. Is down here in this input status. So word clock no lock, AES no lock. I have nothing plugged into the unit, just a mic and headphones right now. So if I have any digital connections, these are just should say sync for anything that's currently connected. So once again, that's kind of the thing you need to think about is if it's showing flipping between sync and lock, that means you have a problem with the clock setup.
Yeah, I don't always think to go there. And if you're using a Thunderbolt, it's a little bit different icon at the bottom, right? It's not that fire. It's a little different.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a different settings panel for the Thunderbolt connection. That's a different driver. Total Mix is completely identical. but you would have to, like, let's say if I wanted to be able to go, sometimes I want to use USB, sometimes I want to use Thunderbolt. I can install both drivers. I can't have both connected at the same time. So you only want to connect one at a time. Otherwise, things can get confused and you may lose, you have to reboot and it could change to the other one. But yeah, it's no problem to have multiple RME drivers installed. I can have, a Fireface USB driver, a Thunderbolt driver, an HDSP E driver for PCI Express cards, all living together on the system with no problem.
Here's a question for the UFX Plus, because I've done that. I've installed both drivers and
Mm-hmm.
did so because sometimes I need the USB ports for other things. Latency wise, with the Thunderbolt driver versus the USB driver for the UFX Plus specifically, which one performs better?
Okay, so this comes up quite a lot, actually. I get this phone call often. All things being equal, Thunderbolt is going to have the lowest possible latency, as it is exactly like a PCIe card inside the computer. It's just extending that PCI Express over a cable. It's not an inexpensive cable, but it's really just carrying that data as if you had an internal card. With USB, there's a little extra buffering involved for safety in the driver, but it's a handful of samples difference. So it's not going to make any major difference on your system. Both will work at ultra low latencies. We can work at 32 sample buffers on Mac, and a 48 sample buffer is the lowest for USB on Windows. So that's, well under 4 milliseconds round trip latency, nothing noticeable. Where you will see a real difference, though, is when your system is under heavy stress. So if you've got a project you're doing that's got a lot of plugins or virtual instruments that are not frozen and are being processed in real time, Thunderbolt and PCIe will hold up a little bit longer before they start to get clicks and pops compared to USB or Firewire. So it's really just those edge conditions where it becomes a significant difference.
Good to know. Well, I think this will probably conclude today's session. And Jeff, thanks for your time. We know you're busy taking care of customers. This recording will stay up on the social media site, so feel free to watch it. And if you have any questions,